Welcome to Tower Technicians. What if you could hang out with experienced tower technicians, industry leaders, and decision makers? Ask them about their experiences, habits, concerns, and frustrations. Then, take an insight or two to guide your own career growth. Each week, Darren Wagner shares an in-depth look at the lives of people in wireless telecom who are always working hard to close the digital divide. His hope is to show you how you can stay safe, grow your career, and reach your fullest potential within the industry. DW is an experienced tower technician who has become an industry leader over the last 3 decades. His goal is to bridge the gap between tower technicians and decision makers within wireless telecom. Now, here's DW.
Hey, what's up, everyone? It's DW. Welcome to the show that's designed to bridge the gap in the communications infrastructure industry that exists between industry leaders, contractors, and the workforce. On this show, we're going to have people that represent different perspectives. We're going to have people that work for carriers, tower owners, OEMs. We're going to have engineering firms. We'll have turfing contractors. We'll have other contractors like subcontractors, specialty contractors. And of course, we're going to have a lot of people on this show that represent the workforce, civil technicians, electrical technicians, underground technicians, and of course, tower technicians as well. And when we have these people, there's several different locations that we'll be conducting these interviews. Today, it's just me. And we're in my office, and we'll have some other guests in my office to be able to do interviews with them. But we'll be traveling to other offices as well of people that are going to be on this show. So we'll be going to other offices, but of course, we'll be going out into the field. And that's the office of the workforce. We'll be getting on job sites and having guests that are working on job sites on our podcast. We'll video in a crew truck or in a crew trailer. And one thing that we definitely will do is we'll climb the towers and we'll have interviews at the top of the towers. That's the one thing that's going to be different about this podcast over every other podcast, is that we're willing to go where everyone is. I've walked the walk. I've done all of this in my career. And so that's what we plan on doing. I will tell you that I do have a disclaimer. That disclaimer is we're not for everyone. Our mission is to improve the industry and bridge the gap, but we're going to touch on some pain points and we're probably going to hurt some feelings. I'm a college dropout from South Louisiana, and I'm going to talk with an accent. I'm going to speak with slang. I'm going to mispronounce words. And because our industry is made up with so many technicians, I want to be real with the technicians as well. So I'm going to use profanity. So again, we're not for everyone. Being that this is episode 1, I want to dig deeper into the why, or the purpose of the show. The purpose of this podcast is to bridge the gap between industry leaders, contractors, and the workforce. So what's this gap that I keep talking about? Well, here it is. Although all 3 of those groups have a common goal, and that's to close the digital divide, there's a division in the industry that I'm calling the gap. The gap is the difference between the perceived and what is the truth. The perception is that tower technicians and some technicians in general are viewed as cowboys or second-class citizens. A lot of people in the industry are labeling these technicians as crazy for working at heights every day. And even to take it a step further, if tower technicians were to go out into the general public and explain what they do on a day-to-day basis, anyone from the general public, most people are going to look at these technicians and say, you're crazy for climbing 200, 300, 400, 1,200 feet on a daily basis. Well, here's the reason why, is because most people wouldn't do what tower technicians do on a daily basis. So the first label that comes to mind for people, in order for them to justify it in their own mind, is that this person must be crazy. That's not the case. In fact, the fact is most of the workforce are highly skilled professionals. the knowledge and skills that it takes to build these networks that we're building on a day-to-day basis is incredible. The courage that it takes to do it in the dangerous situations, in the elements, in the environment, at heights every day is incredible. So these guys should be celebrated, not looked upon with a label that they're crazy or they're cowboys or they're second-class citizens. So that's the gap. And how do I know that that gap exists? Well, I've been in the industry for 28 years, and I got a unique experience because I worked for the carrier, two carriers actually, and I've been the contractor, and I've also been in the workforce. I've been a technician. I've been a tower technician and a ground technician. So I've walked the walk, and I know that this gap exists. So I want to explain, all right, we know what the gap is. What kind of problems is the gap creating? Well, here's the problem. Right now, more than ever, we need our workforce. This gap is not helping us when it comes to retaining our employees. And so inherently, our workforce already has some challenges that we have to address in order to be able to retain our workforce on a regular basis. And that is, these guys have to be willing to travel every day. They have to be willing to stay out of town in hotels with a small team. They have to be willing to work extreme schedules in outdoors and extreme elements and work at heights. And this wears people out. So not everybody's raising their hand to travel all the time and stay in hotels all the time and work with 2 or 3 other people on a day-to-day basis and climb 300, 400, 1,200 feet on a regular basis. So it becomes a morale issue because we're already fighting. We're already coming up with ways to keep morale up. Well, you couple that with the gap that I'm talking about, where other people in the industry are viewing our workforce as cowboys or second-class citizens or crazy. Now it's even more prevalent that our teams are feeling undervalued. And what that affects is several things in the big picture. Number one, safety. If someone has a morale issue or a team has a morale issue and you're putting them out there in, hotels day after day, and you're working them hours and hours and hours, extreme temperatures, extreme conditions. And you're also, saying that, they're the bottom of the barrel. They're the second-class citizens. Their morale is going to come into play when it comes to performing things safely. People are not going to care as much about safety because sometimes they're going to be able to justify it as it being unnecessary. Some of the safety protocol that we have to abide by. Another thing is quality. When someone's morale is affected, their pride gets affected, right? And when someone is no longer proud of themselves, quality gets affected. So taking pride in what they do then becomes an issue because of not only the inherent problems that they face with the industry, but also you got this gap I keep referring to. And then the third thing that this gap causes is project deadlines not being hit. So people taking a lot longer to do things than what they should. And that's because, again, these guys getting beat down on a day-to-day basis. And someone who is of low morale, low esteem, doesn't have a sense of pride, is not going to be the first in line to complete a project on a deadline. So with that in mind, it's a huge problem that affects the entire industry. Again, there's 3 groups: industry leaders, contractors, and the workforce. Let's talk about the first group, industry leaders. I'm classifying carriers, tower owners, and OEMs as the industry leaders. You see, I worked for 2 carriers back in the day. I also worked for an OEM. And I've also worked with tower owners since 1997. And I have a lot of friends in that part of the industry, all of which are good people. But at the end of the day, they all have a business objective. And so for carriers, the carriers are setting the pace for the rest of the industry. They're selling their networks to the end clients. They are continuously having to evaluate expanding their networks for coverage and capacity reasons to meet the demand of the end client. And so they're having to roll out capital projects to address the demand. There's several things that carriers have to try to balance when they're rolling out these capital projects. Expense is one of them. They also have to monitor safety. They got to monitor quality, and they got to pay attention to the timeline on these projects as well. So for the carrier, there's a bunch of things that they're looking at. Now, there was something that came out years ago called matrix pricing. And matrix pricing solved the problem for carriers. It expedited the timeline on which it took to come to an agreement on pricing for certain projects. And all of that is negotiated on the front end. So for those who don't know what matrix pricing is, it's pre-negotiated prices per task. So if a contractor performs task A, they get paid X amount of dollars. If they perform task B, they get paid X amount of dollars. With matrix pricing, it solves the problem of bidding out jobs and the timeline it takes to do that for carriers, which streamlines the process on expanding their networks. So when I talk about matrix pricing, if you're a carrier, it's probably a good thing because it makes your life easier. There's a couple of other things that carriers have to balance: safety, quality, timelines, and regardless of the price, safety still has to remain 100%. Safety is not dependent on the price. There's protocols, there's standards that have to be followed, and either you are compliant with safety or you're not. The same thing goes with quality. There's a reason why the clients, the carriers accept jobs from contractors, and there's an acceptance process because they are evaluating the quality of that job. They need to evaluate the quality because they want to make sure that the equipment lasts for a long time. And then timelines, they're monitoring the timelines to make sure that they're getting the projects done in a timely manner. And as a matter of fact, there's even contracts that include liquidated damages that if contractors don't perform certain jobs in a certain amount of time, that the contractor will have to pay a certain amount of dollars in penalty. Those are some of the things that the carriers are having to balance, and matrix pricing kind of helps them when it comes to balancing the costs. So it works for the carriers. However, it doesn't work for everybody else. And I'm going to give you an example. When's the last time you went to your favorite steak restaurant, sat down to order your steak, and you told the waitress, look, I want to order a steak. I want it to be a filet mignon. I want it to be exactly 8 ounces. I want it seasoned to perfection, which, by the way, is according to my opinion of what perfection is. I want it cooked medium. I want to measure the temperature when it comes out to the table and make sure it's 160 degrees to make sure it's perfectly cooked to medium. I also want it delivered to my table in 15 minutes. Exactly. I want it served on a 10-inch silver platter. And when you serve it, I want you to be wearing white gloves when you serve my steak. Oh, by the way, I'm going to pay $20 for this steak because I eat here often. What do you think the server is going to tell you at that point? Well, I could tell you, chances are the server is probably going to politely tell you she cannot accommodate your request. She's probably going to tell you that because your budget is $20, everything else that you've asked for is not achievable according to your budget. So especially with the rise in cost of everything lately. That's kind of the situation where we're in with matrix pricing right now. You have set pricing by the carriers, and for the contractors, all of the expenses have increased. The expense of workforce, the expense of supply chain, inflation has gone up, everything has gone up, fuel has gone up, everything has gone up, yet matrix pricing stays the same. All right, let's talk about the second group, which are the contractors. So I'm going to divide the contractors into two groups as well. Small contractors and large contractors. So let's talk about the large contractors to start off with. And the line is not that distinct between the two. But when it comes to large contractors, there's also a term that's called turfing vendors or turf vendors that's used. Not all large contractors are turf vendors, but a lot of them are. So to talk about the turf vendors, these turf vendors were a big part of when matrix pricing originally got rolled out. Turfing vendors agreed to this matrix pricing from the carriers, and they agreed that they were not only going to do it according to the pricing, but they were going to continue to maintain the same level of standard when it comes to quality, when it comes to safety, and also meeting the timelines that they've committed to. These turfing contractors have a lot of times fallen under the pressure from the carriers. And at this point, they continue to agree to substandard pricing because, again, expenses have gone up. Matrix pricing has stayed where it is. It hasn't accounted for workforce. It hasn't accounted for fuel. It hasn't accounted for hotels. It hasn't accounted for inflation. It hasn't accounted for all of the increased expenses, and it stayed the same. But yet turfing contractors still have committed to these carriers that they're going to maintain the commitments. Now, what sucks is that some of these turfing contractors or large contractors, they have their own workforce. And so when they have their own workforce, they can perform the jobs at a certain level of quality, certain level of safety, and a certain timeline, which is great. But they've made commitments to these carriers that they cannot self-perform the entire commitment. So they have a certain group of subcontractors that they depend on. And what happens here, especially with turfing contractors, is they're taking 30 to 50% of the margin off of the top of the job, and they're passing it down to the subcontractors. Now, so they're making a commitment to the carrier. They're going to perform this work, and they're going to perform this work to a certain level of quality. They're going to perform this work to a certain level of safety, and they're going to do it in a certain timeline. And they're committing to the carrier that they're going to do it to the matrix price according to the scope of work. And when they pass it down, they're still expecting that the subcontractor, who, by the way, doesn't have the resources that these large contractors have, still perform the job at the same level of quality, same level of standard, same timeline, but with a 30 to 50% margin decrease. And that is a huge problem. And what's happening is because of, number one, matrix pricing never being adjusted, but now you have a tremendous discount on these jobs getting pushed down to subcontractors, to smaller contractors, but the same level of safety and quality and timelines need to be maintained. It's causing a lot of issues. They're cutting corners one way or another. A lot of times they're cutting corners on safety. And that's the unfortunate part. The other thing is that a lot of these turfing contractors are passing the buck. They're not taking accountability. And let me explain what I mean by that. They give the contract or subcontract to the smaller contractor. Smaller contractor performs the job, even though it's discounted 30 to 50%. They still perform it at the same level of safety, same level of quality, and the timeline required. The subcontractor submits for acceptance, and the turfing contractor says, all right, I'm going to take your closeout package and I'm going to submit it to my client for acceptance. I'm not going to accept the job from you, Mr. Subcontractor, until the carrier accepts the job from me, which is total bullshit because they're passing the buck. Subcontractor works for the turfing contractor or the large contractor. There should be an acceptance process there. and there's not. These turfing contractors are getting away with holding their subcontractors off until they get an acceptance, which they never have any level of accountability, any level of responsibility, because they're waiting and holding their subcontractors off. And in the meantime, the subcontractors have less resources, less cash to be able to work on than these turfing contractors. So it's causing a huge issue for the smaller subcontractors who are already struggling because of the increased costs and no adjustment being made. But now cash flows being affected because there's no acceptance and there's no level of responsibility that's taken by the larger or turfing vendors. So that's a huge problem when it comes to the large contractors. So the small contractors, they're typically subcontractors. And, you know, there's a lot of good people that run small businesses out there. A lot of people that have come up through the industry and they try to do the right thing day in and day out. There's something about a business owner that demands respect. Someone who's willing to put it all on the line and willing to, you know, take 100% responsibility for everything associated with their company. That deserves a level of respect. And there's not a lot of people as a small business owner who have been extremely successful because it takes so much work to be able to do it. So for the small business owners and the small contractors that have been successful, I think you deserve some kudos. Unfortunately, there's some bad ones out there too. There's some business owners that go into business for the wrong reasons. And these people are making it difficult for everyone else. And I don't think that they're bad people. I think they just make bad choices. For instance, some of the motivation behind them being in business could be out of greed. You know, they're just trying to make as much money as they possibly can and not care about their client, not care about their employees. And it's just all about them. So that's a bad business model, if you ask me. Another problem with some of the failing businesses or ones that are not so great is maybe some of these business owners need to be educated on how to operate business. Maybe they're depending too much on their workforce to row the boat from when it comes to business processes, and maybe they need to get in the middle of it a little bit more. So I think there's an opportunity for some education when it comes to some of the small businesses, small contractors. So, but one problem that we have with small contractors is they continuously accept low bid, low pricing, and they continually accept it out of desperation. And the problem is because they're desperate for work, they don't have any leverage because a lot of times their record has proven that they may not be trustworthy in a lot of times. So they haven't built themselves up in the industry to be able to have any leverage. So what's happening is these type of contractors are underbidding or undercutting or accepting low bid jobs, and it's making it impossible to perform these jobs in the same manner that is required when it comes to safety, when it comes to quality, and when it comes to getting the jobs done on time. Something has to give when these jobs are accepted by these low quality contractors. And 9 times out of 10, it's safety. And that's unfortunate. And the reason why it's unfortunate is because the people who have to suffer when it comes to their boss or their business owner, their contractor not following safety protocols, they have to suffer because they're at risk with their own lives on a day-to-day basis. These people don't value their technicians. These bottom of the barrel contractors have a lack of safety standards, or they don't enforce the safety standards. They pay their technicians disgracefully low wages. They don't give them benefits. They overwork their technicians. They burn them out, requiring them to work, 16, 18 hours a day, day in and day out. They're making their technicians stay in, lowest class motels, they don't even have hiring standards, like drug testing and background checks. They don't do that. So it's causing a huge issue when the reputation of contractors in general come into play. These people are causing a problem for us. Some of these contractors put their people into these type of situations where it's second class hotels, where it's low wages, where it's low job pay, when extreme conditions, but then they expect their team to thrive, and their teams fail almost 100% of the time. And then these business owners wonder why their teams either form or continue drug habits. They either start having family issues or financial issues. Their teams don't show up for work. And if they do, they're late. Their teams are producing low quality work and not following safety standards, and so when it comes to these type of companies, the owners and the managers of these type of companies are setting their teams up for failure. They're setting themselves up for failure. And so for you contractors out there that are in this country that fit this description, and you're out to make yourself rich and make and screw your employees, your greed and ignorance has gotten entirely out of control. You fucked this industry for far too long, and the time is now for change. So there's too many resources out there for you guys to continue this kind of behavior. Okay, so you've heard me talk about the industry leaders and the contractors and some of the positive and negative things up until now. And so I'd like to get into the third group, which is the workforce. And so when I talk about the workforce, I mean all field personnel. That includes civil technicians, underground technicians, electricians, and even tower technicians. And I kind of want to focus in on tower technicians, obviously, because it's extremely relevant to what we do. And that's the title of our podcast, obviously. So I'm going to go hard on the tower technicians here for a few minutes. And there's a reason for that. I feel like this is the area that we can leverage improvement in this area, and it will then carry over to improving in the other groups as well. First, I want to explain that I've been a tower technician. I climb to this day. I've worked day in and day out as a tower technician, climbing hundreds of feet every day. And so I've walked the walk. I know what it is to do this type of work, and I've been there and I've done that. And so my experience is that most tower technicians are good, honest, hardworking individuals that take pride in their jobs. But there's a problem, just like in any other large group, there's a smaller subset of that group that is creating a problem for in regards to the perception of the larger group. And what I mean by that is you have a small group of people that, although their intent may be right, they're making some mistakes. And one of the biggest mistakes that they're making is adopting this mindset of entitlement. And so what's happening is you'll hear these voices, on social media or in conversations on, look, I climb every day. I'm climbing 200, 300, 400, 1,000, 1,500 feet. And so I deserve to get paid top dollar. And because I climb, I deserve X amount of dollars. And I'm here to say that I'm calling bullshit on that. And that's the sense of entitlement I'm talking about. Yes, you're working in a dangerous environment. Yes, it's extreme conditions. Yes, it's a tough job, and it takes a lot of courage to do this. But the fact that you put your body in a certain position doesn't entitle you to get paid certain pay. What entitles you to get certain pay is the value that you create for the organization that you work for. So when you climb 200, 300, 400 feet and now you're in a position to work. You've just completed your drive to work. Now you've got to actually do something. You've got to contribute to the mission of the organization that you work for. So you have to get some work done at that elevation. And so just because you're existing at that elevation doesn't entitle you to top pay. So that's the mindset that I'm talking of. And so what we need to understand is this small group of people that have loud voices on social media, by the way, they bitch a lot about low wages and lack of benefits and all of that, and how unfair they're treated. And I get it. In a lot of cases, some of these technicians are treated unfair by some of these contractors. So I do agree with some of it, but some of it is just out of hand. Some of these guys that are bitching about low wages and lack of benefits and rising up and all that, some of these guys are the same people who their safety and their quality sucks. And to those guys, you've made decisions in your life that have brought you to where you are now. And in some cases, it could be you don't have a driver's license. I mean, how many people in this industry in the workforce do we know that don't have a driver's license because it's been taken away from them? Or maybe it's that you are in a financial mess. You're living paycheck to paycheck and you can't pay your bills. And so you're dependent on your employer to, advance you money or pay for personal expenses. That's real things that are happening these days. Or maybe you're in a relationship issue where you have some family problems going on because of decisions you've made in the past. And those family problems are carrying over into your work. And so you're spending hours at a time on your phone when you should be working. Or better yet, maybe there's some substance abuse problems that are causing some issues at work. Maybe you've had this issue in the past, and now that you're working on the road and you're working in this environment, it has made it even more of an issue. Or you've never addressed the issue a long time ago. But the fact is, we do have these issues in this industry. This is real issues that we're having to deal with. And quite honestly, the people of the entitled mindset tend to forget about those type of issues that they're presenting to the companies that they're working for. And quite honestly, these people are a liability to the company, but yet they're entitled, which drives me crazy because I don't even understand how someone can be entitled or think that they deserve top pay, but they're presenting all of these other risks to the organization that they work for. They're not providing the level of value because they don't have a driver's license. So now they're disqualified from operating a company vehicle. Or there's this added stress when it comes to financials. Now you're having to get, advances. Now your company has to advance your money and pay your bills and all this kind of stuff. I mean, the list goes on, but yet these are the loud voices of the entitled on social media. So the crazy part about it is that, you guys have created an environment on social media in which, instead of us uniting as a workforce, instead of tower technicians, having some level of camaraderie, it's completely opposite. Although you have these same guys who want to preach camaraderie and preach unity, these same guys are, the first time a photo gets posted because someone is proud of their work and they want to post it on this Facebook group, heaven forbid that happens, because this dude's getting roasted. Like, he posts some of his work that he's proud of. These cats are going on there and they are ripping him to pieces. They're going to not only rip his work apart, but they're going to rip apart everything that's in the background. They're going to rip apart what harness he's making, what wearing, what sunglasses he's wearing, what hard hat he's wearing. They're going to rip apart everything. And the worst part about it is the people that are doing the ripping are not experts themselves. Every one of us have some room for improvement. There's not one person that is perfect in these groups, but yet I'll be damned that there can't be one post in one of these groups that are all tower climbers that they do not start ribbing on each other. And so as a workforce, as an industry, wouldn't we want to create some level of unity instead of bashing each other, right? Maybe there's some opportunity for education, and maybe you can educate whoever it is that's making the post, but do it on a one-to-one basis instead of trying to call the man out. I just think that there's some opportunity for improvement there, right? These same cats who are criticizing everybody on Facebook are making baseless accusations. They're making assumptions and not even doing their research. They're complaining about everything in the industry, but never offering any kind of solutions. They're just complaining about what everybody else is doing. They see Facebook posts, they see social media posts, and the first thing they do is they go low. They go into the negative. They make assumptions that people are doing things or not doing things, and they don't know what they're talking about. And that's the unfortunate part about it, is because these same people are so they haven't been educated on the matter, and they haven't made a point to educate themselves on the matter. So it just makes everyone look at the entire group as, you know what, I don't even want to have dialogue with tower technicians. So a lot of people in the industry don't even want to get involved in these type of groups because they're afraid that all of a sudden somebody's going to make baseless accusations against them. It's gotten out of hand. And so unfortunately, that's the situation. That's the situation. And you can look for yourself, look on social media, you can see it yourself. The good news is it doesn't have to stay that way. We can make a change. If we can get this group, the workforce, to start changing their mindset about how they view each other, how they view others, and stop pinning everybody against each other and start creating some level of unity, we can turn this thing around. We definitely can. Unfortunately, you're going to have negative Nancy's. You're going to have people that are going to talk about the negative all of the time. And those people are probably going to remain the same. And those people are always going to be status quo. They're never going to excel in their career. And unfortunately, as an industry, as a group, as the workforce, maybe it's a time for us to level up and leave those type of people behind. So those type of people are always going to try to leverage themselves as the role that they're contributing to the industry. They're going to try to leverage their title to gain higher wages. That's not the way to do it. I'm hoping that I can convince you in this podcast on how you can leverage yourself. First of all, personal excellence is the ultimate rebellion. These guys are trying to rebel against the industry because they're tower climbers or tower technicians, tower dogs, tower hands. They're using their title or the fact that they climb as the leverage for rebellion. That's not the way to do it. Building your personal excellence is the ultimate rebellion. The way to leverage yourself is through hard work. The way to leverage yourself is by taking pride in yourself. The way to do this is to have discipline over your habits, over your finance, over your family, over your day-to-day activities. The way to do this is making yourself better every day, day after day after day, continually improving and pursuing personal excellence. The way to solve problems is by solving problems for your company. The company that you work for, solve some problems for them. You solve problems for them, we're going to solve problems in the industry. You solve problems for the company, the organization you work for, you're going to create value in yourself. Start looking for ways to create value in yourself. When you ask for a raise, you want to be able to have some leverage, right? How do you have leverage? It's not by going on social media and saying, I'm a tower climber, so I should get paid top dollar. That's not how you leverage yourself. How do you leverage yourself? You build value in yourself every day. How do you build value in yourself? Well, this is how you can build value in yourself. Let's talk about safety. Okay. Maybe you're good at safety. Okay. Maybe you're excellent at safety. Maybe you are the best at safety. Well, guess what? Safety is always evolving. Safety is always changing. There's always new and improved ways to do things. Efficiency comes into play, and safety is always evolving as the industry evolves. So you have to stay on your game. Maybe you're good at quality, and quality is always evolving. As long as technology is continuously evolving and we're swapping out equipment, quality is going to evolve right along with it. Well, guess what? Maybe you're the top dog, the best ever at safety and quality, and you've kept up with the evolution of both, and there's nobody better than you. Well, what kind of leader are you? What kind of a coworker are you? What kind of a team player are you? These kind of things contribute to your value. What kind of husband are you? What kind of person are you? What kind of man or woman are you? These things create value in you. And so what you want to do is be able to leverage yourself by creating value. So when you go to your company and you say, hey, boss, I think it's time for a raise, there's not even a doubt that you're going to get a raise. There's no question, because you've created this value in yourself that it's undeniable that if you ask for a raise, you're going to get a raise, as long as it's within reason, right? So the undeniable value that you create is priceless. And so that's what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to encourage the workforce to start creating value in themselves. And when you start creating value in yourself, it's going to carry over to your company. So there's never been a time ever as a tower technician that you could leverage your value if you're skilled, you're professional, and you're on your game. There's never been a time when you can get compensated at the levels that you can right now. The market for a tower technician at this day and age is at its highest that it's ever been. It's continuously increasing. And so as long as there's a high demand for building out networks, your demand is going to be there. And so I would highly encourage you guys to continue to build your value. Like I said earlier, personal excellence is the ultimate rebellion. Civilization would not exist. Our society would not exist without our industry. At this day and age, our society is 100% dependent on our industry, and our industry is 100% dependent on the workforce. If we level up the workforce, bring the value up in the workforce, it'll level up the organizations in the workforce, in the industry. It'll level up the companies, the contractors. It'll level those up. And then we can start demanding some respect. So the workforce, the first step is identifying with who we are. You know, for years and years and years, guys who climbed on towers called themselves tower dogs, tower climbers, tower hands. Let's start taking some personal respect and dignity in ourselves. Let's call ourselves who we are. We're technicians, because we're highly skilled. We're highly professional. We have courage to do this every day. And so let's start calling ourselves tower technicians, because I get there's some pride behind being a tower dog, right? I get there's some pride behind being a tower hand, the legacy behind these names. I get all that. But I feel like we have some room for improvement in how we identify with everyone else in the industry. Let's start identifying as someone who is a little bit more skilled and professional. And quite honestly, the technicians have a level of courage that no other group in the industry has. There's nobody in this industry that does what tower technicians do. And quite honestly, there's no one else in this country or in this world that do what tower technicians do. Like I said earlier, people call them crazy because it's something they're not willing to do. So let's get out of that. Let's get out of the people calling us crazy. Let's get out of the label of being a cowboy or crazy, and stop adapting the mindset that's spoken over you. People speak over you that you're a cowboy, or you're crazy, and then all of a sudden you're taken into that mindset. Get out of that. Let's start demanding some dignity, take some individual ownership of development, of your personal development. It'll increase your value to your company, as I mentioned earlier. And the value that you increase when it comes to your company you're going to get rewarded when it comes to your pay. When we start pursuing personal excellence, it's going to cause the change that's needed in the industry. And that's a fact. All right. So you heard me talk about the three groups, but there's some people in this industry that do not fit in any of the three groups, but are extremely vital to this industry. And they're the advocates. They work on our behalf to make this industry thrive, whether it's through legislation, through education, through charity, or all of the above. There's people out there that are working on just making this industry a better place to work and making it thrive, creating opportunities. And so those people need to be acknowledged as well. They don't fit into the other three groups, but they are in a group by themselves. And I just want to send a shout out to them. They're extremely important. So to wrap up this episode, I want to acknowledge that there are problems at every level in this industry. But I feel like the solution starts with leveling up our workforce. And quite honestly, that's the reason why I named the podcast Tower Technicians. If we can level up our technicians, it'll send a ripple effect throughout the industry onto the contractors, onto the larger contractors, onto tower owners, OEMs, and carriers. I feel like if we increase the value of our workforce, we will certainly increase some leverage that we may have. My hope is that technicians will completely lose the identity that is described in words like crazy and cowboy, and they'll become part of a workforce that has dignity and respect, and they'll have a sense of pride to be part of this thing, and they're described with words like courageous and disciplined and highly skilled professionals. As an industry, we have a lot of problems we have to join together to solve, but there's one thing that you can 100% control, and that is you. When we start taking 100% ownership of ourselves and start pursuing personal excellence, then we'll start making some progress. When enough technicians start increasing the value that they present to their organizations, to the contractors, then the contractors will then increase in value. And then if enough contractors start increasing in value, then the workforce and the contractors then can present themselves to tower owners, OEMs, and carriers with some more leverage. And then we'll be able to solve some problems like matrix pricing and some of the other big issues that are sitting out there. But see, the problem is bigger than all of that. The problem is individual accountability. That means you. That means me. That means tower technicians. That means contractors. That means industry leaders. If you're not willing to take personal ownership in this, that's a problem. This is your industry. This is your career. This is your livelihood, your future, the future of your family. Take some fucking ownership here. All right. Well, that's the show. So if you liked it, or if it was something that interested you or intrigued you, need you to take action. And so in our industry, we're all about acronyms. And so this acronym is called S2R2, subscribe, share, rate, and review. So I need you to subscribe wherever it is that you listen to podcasts, or maybe YouTube. I need you to share the show. I need you to rate it, and I need you to leave me a review. And I truly appreciate it.